It is now Wednesday, May 5th and Thursday, May 6th, advanced class, and we're going to talk about kidnapping women because that's, and now I anticipated the conversation going that direction. You all need help. Let's see. Plus the thing up there where it says how many fingers on your right hand connects to what we're going to get to today. And for those of you unaware, it was an interesting and weird start to the day. Apparently people make poor choices in apartments. Other than that, we're going to need our giant doorstop of a book as we get into things from there. We're going to get a chance to do some ready bits to sort of cut down on how much you guys get to complain. We're going to do a talky bit. We're going to have a Mr. Broviak getting frustrated bit. There we go. Again, I'm going to stop showing you students of the month soon, but I figured why not embarrass them as much. Well, those kids who have emotions, embarrass them as much as possible. Student of the week, I'll put up our new student of the week next week. I don't know which classes I'm looking at yet. We did not get a new high score, but we got a new high score for this class, which is we now have 2 kids in the 4-second range, which is amazing. Ooh, hang on a second. I forgot I got to do the thing. Pause recording. I'll be right back. And we're back. Sorry, I forgot to hand out a thing to the kid who made the top wall. He now has himself a thing. Let's see, so there. And next week, you guys get a chance to spend points for those of you who have them and want to. And that's fine with me. Excuse me. On that one, we're going to continue Princess Bridey stuff here. If you did not finish chapter 4, we're going to talk about it here in a second. We're going to talk about 2, 3, 4, Zoo of Death. We're going to talk about what happens to Wesley. And then we're going to talk about the joy of chapter 4. And hopefully we're going to get into chapter 5 together and why I'm wearing the shirt I'm wearing today. Home children, the shirt, I'll show you here, like that one. It connects to our chapter 5. We're going to get into those people here in just a moment. Should be from here on out. I am wearing Princess Bride shirts from here until I think the end of the school year, which will connect like the different parts that we're going to get a chance to read. Nate.
Anyone in this classroom, so you nailed it.
Right. And Jadine. Which shirts I've worn? Because I get dressed in the morning? I wasn't trying to sass you. I was just confused also. Squid. How silly of me. And Eli? Yeah, in this box that you were standing right next to this said scissors. And then not us yet. See the Florin and Gilder. I'll keep putting this one up there as we go through it. So at this point, they're right next to it. The countries are so tiny, they're not really even showing up on there, nor do they really exist anymore because Europe. And so they were right next to each other in that area. Ledford. Florin. Gilder is the bad guys. And then so they're the ones that we really don't see a whole lot from Gilder. We just hear them talking about Gilder quite a bit. Florin is where Morgenstern was from. So he wrote his history about that particular thing. Oh, I don't know if this will connect to you guys or not, but I had this realization of a connection. You guys ever seen the show Drunk History? If you've not, it's a show on Comedy Central where they have people who drink alcohol and then they tell you a story that is actual from history, where they go through like about things that happen. The problem is it's not real based in fact. The general idea is there, but the person is very inebriated. This book is essentially drunk history because S. Morgenstern is telling you about stuff that happened. It's just not all the facts are real accurate. Most of it's there, but he got creative with some bits he couldn't necessarily remember. So like all the characters are real people and most of the things I've heard in there are real, but every once in a while when he can't figure out the actual thing that happened, he just sort of makes jokes and fills stuff in, which again is how I would teach history, which is why I'm not a social studies teacher. Because unlike English, where you get to make stuff up and it's like teaching, in social studies, apparently they deal in facts, which is why I'm not there. It's also why I don't teach math, because apparently they deal in facts also, which is not my strength at all. But making stuff up and entertaining kids, I don't know. Like swimming or like on a boat? Oh, probably a month, several weeks. I don't know. It was a long time. I mean, nowadays you could fly, but back then it was by boat and a long time. So long enough for a pirate to get you. Squiddy. Gilder. technically, I mean, because this was taking place, I want to say 16, 17s. I mean, kind of. It was like at the very beginning of the whole America thing. We weren't like America. We weren't, right. We were America, not America. Does that make sense? Right. The difference between the two. We've not added the A yet. We were still in the A. We've not removed it. Again, math, not my strength. Yes, but I'm also going to go through all the components. So hold on to your question for a second. Yes, Princess Marina. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. He is not the best of people. Yeah, and it was the idea of him having to be in the presence of an ugly person. Yeah, it was more, yeah, as we get into it, he is just not a good human in general. And it was much more about the fact that how dare you try to make me marry a bald chick? That's embarrassing and insulting. And so he flips. So yeah.
Kind of like on the same time frame, like the one with that farm and the one with like the castle. When did the whole
Procession of things.
come to their twice, like 2 different times? Like when it comes to the artist thing, and then when Prince came to steal.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't the whole procession so much, but and that second time, they don't really tell us. It just said basically he shows up and is like, come marry me. And she's like, okay. Yes, they were 2 different times. Yeah, because the count showed up and then did like his little interview and checked out how hot she was, and then went back, and then the Princess Marina thing fell through, and then it was like, hey, I've got this other hot chick, and he was like, I'll take a hot chick over a bald chick, because again, not a good person. Trust me, this book's not going to help you. No.
So Buttercup is talking about how like because he sent her a letter before he boarded the boat.
Yes, which we're
and
ready to
she's
get to.
talking about how she was like, oh, we're not like can't really do much on the boat. Like I'm probably not gonna get any letters for her. But she was thinking like he was gonna be able to send her letters on the boat. But you can't send letters on the boat because we're on the sea. We should like drop in a picture in the boat in a bottle.
Yeah, I don't know if that's Morgenstern being sassy or her being dumb or a little combination of both or me just not understanding how mail worked a long time ago. And so that maybe he threw a bottle. I don't know. I could make a thing up. I mean, again, it's not social studies. So, Greta. Oh, it actually stands for Simon. Sorry. It took me a second to figure. I'm like, what ass are you talking? Ask what Simon Morgenstern. And so they actually get to that later on. They tell you about his first name being Simon. So that's really fair enough. So that's Morgenstern, author of Princess. We'll talk about that later. Am I lying about the S standing for Simon?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's what he told me. I'm just going off his information. I haven't interviewed him. He was dead a couple of years ago. Ledford. Was it the?
No,
Yeah. Crosswind and then the falling and the burning and no, basically it's just the idea that it blew the hair off and that was the hair thing. Yes, the fire was contained, but not the damage. Yeah, because he was gonna beat her. Because he's again, have we not covered the fact that he's not a good person? Right, which we're going to talk about, but not until after lunch. It's time to go get food. Oh, children, we're going to get food and talk about Zoo of Death and bald chicks and stuff like that and kidnapping women and all kinds of fun things. But apparently we currently have issues. So go kidnap a chick and find a bald person. Give me a second. God, you're in a hurry. And hey. All right, so to here we left off with you guys with her being in love and him leaving to go to America and her running into a tree and crying and him slamming the door in her face. It was just brings me entertainment. And yes, Elena, I did notice the fancy lights in your room a second ago. I was paying attention to those also. Um, I wanted to read the chance we got the letters that she sort of no the greeting that she does, which she always says like I love you. His letter to her from the ship or like that is like things are going well and I love you. I stubbed my toe and I love you. That was strange to giggle. But anyway, jumping to the important part, what happens to Wesley? There we go. So all that's also the part I wanted to get to is the fact that we open with all this wonderful love stuff and we're like, oh my God, it's a beautiful love story, and he's dead. And so now Wesley's gone, which sets us up for her to finally marry, well, not the love of her life, but the Count, who is not the love of her life on any level whatsoever. But she no longer cares, and he needs to marry a hot girl, so it works out well. Prince, sorry. My fault. I got distracted on that one. Yeah, I mean, very much so. And she like threatened to like kill herself and die, and he was all that. But she's a little hard-headed, which is why I respect her. But she doesn't die yet. Yes, Kyra? From the Dread Pirate Roberts, which never leaves any people behind, and he was on the boat going to America, and apparently the ship got attacked, and then he got killed. But they don't go into graphic detail if you were wanting that part. Nate?
What makes no sense is that if they leave no survivors, then how would the word get out that they leave no survivors?
I'm assuming it's a Morgenstern thing again, or maybe they just find the boat left behind. Or maybe they, I don't know, maybe I've got nothing. Again, I wasn't around at that time. It was a few years before me. Eli? Yeah, so don't read the back of the book. It goes right along with seeing the movie too. From there, if you've seen the movie, again, there's a lot of things that are different, but there's a handful of things that are along the same. So if you have, don't ruin things from there because there's going to be other deaths and things that occur. And again, just like with that whole Outsiders thing, don't ruin the deathly bits. Good flex. So again, don't ruin things for other people. Yes, dear. I'm assuming usually they're just taking all the stuff that's on the ship. And then once you've done all of that, sometimes you do it because you don't want people to know it was you, and other times they're just bad humans and they just decide to kill everybody. I'm assuming, I mean, I'm not a perfect mass murderer myself, so I don't know the thinking that goes into it, but I'm assuming it's something like that. Someday, so we get to the Zoo of Death and we get to the Prince. And so let's see, there was he fighting a monkey? Was that what it? An ape. I apologize. Do you guys know the difference between a monkey and an ape? Monkeys have tails, apes do not. So monkeys have tails, apes do not. So anytime they are usually, but there's some big monkeys and small apes. But you can always, that's the thing I learned is that monkeys have tails, apes do not. So like an orangutan does not have a tail, which puts it in the ape family. But if they do have a tail, then that, because usually apes live on the ground, and then usually more monkeys are up in trees, but orangutans also live in the ground. All I know is the tail thing. Beyond that, again, this is why I don't teach social studies, because I started dabbling close to fact or science or any of the classes that deal in fact. Not my strength at all. Squiddy. I'm so glad you felt the need to share that with the squid. That was so kind of you. And we get to the Zoo of Death, which is, why is it called the Zoo of Death? Yeah, he just used it. It sounds exciting, and you're thinking that like things are going to get killed there, but it's more that he just kills all the stuff in it. It's just the zoo of hunting, and I'm going to kill all the things that are here. So it's not a good Zoo of Death. It's really depressing Zoo of Death. Rye. Okay. Let's see. Then we get to the parts that this was the section in part 2 and 3 and definitely in part 4. All the things that Goldman cut out the one year I tried doing without reading the intro. This is where I started losing kids as we started getting into the whole chapters 2, 3, and 4 and the whole big chunks that, because chapter 2 had big chunks that got cut out when you met the Princey dude in the Zoo of Death. And then definitely in chapter 4, they cut out like a whole bunch in that one. And then, yeah, pretty much they got the whole thing. And then chapter 3 was just a little bit back and forth. Kyra.
The dangerous game or whatever.
Yeah, the dangerous game.
Oh, interesting. All right. I'll roll with that one. It's the same time period. It was written by one of his contemporaries. You are correct. They talked about it in 8th grade too. And then we got to the Princess Norina issue. And what's wrong with Princess Norina? The fact that the girl has no hair. Which again, I have no issue with, but apparently again, the prince, not a good person. And he definitely has issues with it and does the whole throwing a fit because of her not having hair and being bald. And did we cover all the questions with the wind and the things and the hair and the roar and the freaking out and the stuff like that? You still count as a person, Swidkins. And then let's see, was that when we got to the Prince Edward Ink and do they love each other?
No.
Ooh, you guys got really on that one. No, not even. I mean, and as we get into it moving forward, realize Prince does not love her either. There is no like it's a one-sided thing, and he's like someday he could care less. For him, it is a straight up business deal where he is just trying to make an agreement, and so he just needs some hot girl, and he was like, I just need like the prettiest of all of them, and she's like, I gave up on all things because I don't care because my Wesley's dead. So that's when you get the whole marriage and their love and stuff like that. And so she is going to become the new queen, which is where we get to this title of book because she got turned into a princess and she's getting ready to be a bride. Hence, Princess Bride. Morgan's turn. Morgan. Nate. Sorry, I was looking at the name Morgan's turn in front of me, and my brain just kind of went. Yes, Nate.
Does that mean that he is going to? Is that your foreshadowing that he is going to shoot him?
I prefer not to answer that question.
Yeah.
I'm not saying yes or no. I fear, however I answer it, you guys will either A, not believe me, or B, read too much into it. So I have a feeling I am set up now, or no matter how I answer this, if I go, no, he does not cheat on her, they're going to go, if I go, okay, he does cheat on her, I'm like, there's no, yes, he cheats on her and doesn't cheat on her and then kills her and then she's alive. So that covers all of my areas. Kyra.
So when I asked about Wesley and how he died or whatever, you're like, for some reason you're like, no, that hasn't died yet.
And then you just like shrugged it off like you didn't say that. What happened? Like, why would you say that?
I did not expect you to pay attention. I'm sorry, right?
Okay.
American beavers cheat, but
Hold that thought. Sasha. Yeah, go for it. We're not going to talk about cheating beavers. And then we get to chapter 4. And chapter 4 was that when he cut out the entire thing? He did cut out the entire chapter 4.
Yeah, he just did them off and then just he did recap on like.
Right, because that was one all about becoming a princess and all the things that were. Yeah. Again, personally, I'm okay with that part being cut out. Also, this is not a big one. And as we've not looked, chapter 5 is our long chapter, but it's also the exciting chapter. It's if you've seen the movie or heard of the movie, most of the movie is chapter 5. It's like they just took that one chapter, made it a movie, and then sort of went on from there. So like the beginning part's not really in it, and like the end part's only kind of in it. So it's basically just all chapter 5. Which brings us to chapter 5. Let's get a chance to get a new bit, ready bits and talky bits. And my shirt will make more sense to you in just a moment because we're going to meet these characters in just a moment in chapter 5. All right. That's right. I read those earlier. Glad to see. Well, if it helps, what happened was I was making this last night at home and I was trying to remember what page it was. So the fact that I got within a couple pages of it, I was really happy. So technically, look at that. We're already ahead. We're on 97. See, really, that's a 7 if you squint your eyes and look at it just right. Yeah, see, it's called a JC7, I believe is the way. All I know is that tomorrow with third period, I'm gonna say 97, and then I'm gonna leave that up just like that and see how many kids question me. And I think it's gonna be a fun little social experiment. And how many will go, is that a 1? I'll go, no, it's 97, that's the page we're on. And I'm just gonna play it off and we're gonna see what happens. You can tell it's a 7. I agree. You don't think I can convince them that that's a 7 tomorrow? See, no, this is math, science, and social studies thinking right there. You guys are caught up in fact. You got to get on my English boat. Whole different thing. JC, did you just hurt yourself thinking? Okay. Stop, wait.
I don't know how to do it. But anyway,
The Great Square. The Great Square of Florence City was filled as never before, awaiting the introduction of Prince Humperdinck's bride-to-be, Princess Buttercup of Hammersmith. The crowd had begun forming some 40 hours earlier, but up to 24 hours before, there were still fewer than 1,000. But then, as the moment of introduction grew nearer and across the country, the people came. None had ever seen the princess, but rumors of her beauty were continual, and each was less possible than the one before. So everyone's telling her how hot she is, and no one believes that she could possibly be that hot when it turns out she is that hot. Correct. Hammersmith? Yeah, they just randomly made up a spot and just gave her the name. Apparently, that's like a royalty thing that you can do. Oh, not that basic. He didn't choose it. It's a last name. So, yeah, it's just a last name. I don't know how last names work. Again, that's a social studies thing. I just make up last names. At noontime, Prince, we hate his last name, appeared at the balcony of his father's castle and raised his arms. The crowd, which by now was at the danger size, slowly quieted. There were stories that the king was dying, that he was already dead, that he'd been dead long since, and that he was fine. My people, sorry, wrong voice. My people, my beloveds, from whom we draw our strength, today is a day of greeting. As you must have heard, my honored father's health is not what it once was. He is, of course, 97, so who can ask more? As you also know, Florin needs a male heir. The crowd began to stir now. It was to this lady that I heard so much about. In 3 months, our country celebrates its 500th anniversary. To celebrate that celebration, I shall, on that sundown, take for my wife the Princess Buttercup of Hammersmith. You do not know her yet, but you will meet her now. And he made a sweeping gesture, and the balcony doors swung open. You got it closed all the way. They're doing a hearing test out there, and apparently I'm loud. Swung open, and Buttercup moved out beside him on the balcony. And the crowd, quite literally, gasped. The 21-year-old princess, see, no longer creepy. 21, everything's good. The 21-year-old princess far surpassed the 18-year-old mourner. Her figure faults were gone. The too bony elbow having fleshed out nicely, the opposite pudgy wrist could not have been trimmed. Pudgy wrist could not have been trimmer. Her hair, which was once the color of autumn, was still the color of autumn, except that before she had tended it herself, whereas now she had 5 full-time hairdressers who managed things for her. This was long after hairdressers. In truth, ever since there have been women, there have been hairdressers, Adam being the first, though the King James scholars do their very best to muddy this point. That's Adam from Adam and Eve. Her skin was still wintry cream, but now with 2 handmaidens aside to each appendage, and 4 for the rest of her, an actual and certain lights seemed to provide her the gentle, continually moving as she moved, glow. Prince Humperdinck took her hand and held it high, and the crowd cheered. That's an oath. Mustn't risk overexposure, the prince said, and he started back in toward the castle, and I had to let Colleen in because she accidentally got kicked out. Colleen is back in now. And then I got distracted. They have waited, some of them, so long, Buttercup answered. I would like to walk among them. We do not walk among commoners unless it is unavoidable. I have known more than a few commoners in my time. They will not, I think, harm me. And with that, she left the balcony, reappeared a moment later on the great steps of the castle, and, quite alone, walked open-armed down into the crowd. Wherever she went, the people parted. She crossed and recrossed the great square, and always ahead of her, the people swept apart to let her pass. Buttercup continued, moving slowly and smiling alone, like some land messiah. The idea being, if you guys know the Bible, that Moses guy who split the water, that they're referring to here is that she walks through the crowd, they just keep splitting in front of her. So she keeps trying to get close to people, they keep like splitting and moving away. So she's not trying to split them, it just sort of seems to happen. None of the people there would never forget that day. None of them, of course, had ever been so close to perfection, and the great majority adored her instantly. There were, to be sure, some who, while admitting she was pleasing enough, were withholding judgment as to her quality as a queen. And of course, there were some more who were frankly jealous. Very few of them hated her, and only 3 of them were planning to murder her. That's where we take our turn. And by the way, the 3, that's why I'm wearing the shirt. These are the 3 who are going to kill her. We're going to meet them in just a moment. We're going to get to this. Operation Deathy Bits.
Giant,
The mind. You're going to just give it a second. It'll make more sense in a moment when you jiggle English. Oh, the is right there. Okay. So well, yeah, you have to plan before you achieve. Buttercup naturally knew none of this except for all the angry children who kept yelling at the poor innocent teacher. She was smiling, and when people wanted to touch her gown, well, she let them. And when they wanted to brush their skin against hers, well, she let them do that too. She had studied hard to do things royally, and she wanted very much to succeed. So she kept her posture erect and her smile gentle, so that her death was so close that it only made her laugh if someone had told her. But in the farthest corner of the great square, in the highest building in the land, deep in the darkest, deepest shadow, the man in black stood waiting. His not black. His boots were black and leather. His pants were black, and his shirt, his mask was black, blacker than raven. But blackest of all were his flashing eyes, flashing and cruel and deadly. And yes, he is the person on the cover. Buttercup was more than a little weary after her triumph. The touching of the crowds had exhausted her, so she rested a bit. And then, toward mid-afternoon, she changed into her riding clothes and went to fetch horse. This was the one aspect of her life that had not changed in the years preceding. She still loved to ride, and every afternoon, weather permitting or not, she rode alone for several hours in the wild land beyond the castle. She did her best thinking then. Not that her best thinking ever expanded horizons, but still, she told herself she was not a dummy either. So as long as she kept her thoughts to herself, well, where was the harm? As she rode through the woods and streams and heather, her brain was a whirl. The walk through the crowds had moved her, and in a way most strange. For even though she had done nothing for 3 years now but trained to be a princess and a queen, Today was the first day she actually understood that it was all soon to be a reality. And I just don't like Humperdinck, she thought. It's not that I hate him or anything. I just never see him. He's always off someplace or playing in the zoo of death. To Buttercup's way of thinking, there were two main problems. One, was it wrong to marry without like? And two, if it was it too late to do anything about it? The answers to her way of thinking as she rode along were one, no, and two, yes. It wasn't wrong to marry someone you didn't like. It just wasn't right either. If the whole world did it, well, that wouldn't be so great. What with everybody kind of grunting at everybody else as the years went by. But of course, not everybody did it, so forget about that. The answer to two was even easier. She had given her word she would marry, and that would be enough. True, he had told her quite honestly that if she said no, he would have to have her disposed of in order to keep respect for the crown at its proper level. Still, she could have, had she so chosen, said no. Everyone had told her since she became a princess in training that she was very likely the most beautiful woman in the world. Now, she was going to be the richest and most powerful as well. Don't expect too much from life, Buttercup told herself as she rode along. Learn to be satisfied with what you have. Dusk was closing in when Buttercup crested the hill. She was perhaps half an hour from the castle. Real quick, our next checkpoint, since you're leaving, have to take off, I believe is going to be page 142. Yes, but it's not due until Monday.
Oh, we have to read.
Correct. I'm letting you know I'm going to read as much as we can talk. So page 142 is your next checkpoint, which is going to be for Monday. So I'm going to tell you because you're going to leave. All right. Suddenly, she reined in horse. Suddenly, she reined on horse, for standing in the dimness beyond was the strangest trio she had ever seen. The man in front was dark, Sicilian perhaps, with the gentlest face, almost angelic. He had one leg too short and the makings of a humpback, but he moved forward toward her with surprising speed and nimbleness. The other two remained rooted. The second, also dark, probably Spanish, was as erect and slender as the blade of steel that was attached to his side. The third man, mustachioed, perhaps a Turk, was easily the biggest human being she had ever seen. A word, the Sicilian said, raising his arms. His smile was more angelic than his face. Buttercup halted. Speak. Oh, we are but poor circus performers, the Sicilian explained. It is dark, and we are lost. We were told there was a village nearby that might enjoy our skills. You are misinformed, Buttercup told him. There is no one, not for many miles. No. Then there will be no one to hear you scream, the Sicilian said, and he jumped with frightening agility toward her face. That was all that Buttercup remembered. Perhaps she did scream. If she did, it was more from terror than anything else, because certainly there was no pain. His hands expertly touched places on her neck, and unconsciousness came. To help you visualize, if you can't see my shirt, then I figured I would put pictures up there. This is the Sicilian, this is going to be the Spaniard, and that's going to be the Turk, or the brawn, the brains, and the sword, as we continue. She awoke to the lapping of water. She was wrapped in a blanket, and the giant Turk was putting her in the bottom of a boat. For a moment, she was about to talk, but then when they began talking, she thought it better to listen. And after she had listened for a moment, it got harder and harder to hear because of the terrible pounding of her heart. I think you should kill her now, the Turk said. The less you think, the happier I'll be, the Sicilian answered. There was the sound of ripping cloth. Oh, what is that? The Spaniard asked. The same as I attached to her saddle, the Sicilian replied. Fabric from the uniform of an officer of Gilder. I still think, the Turk began, she must be found dead on the Gilder frontier, or we will not be paid the remainder of our fee. Is that clear enough for you? I feel better when I know what's going on, that's all. People are always thinking I'm so stupid because I'm big and strong. Sometimes I drool a little when I get excited. The reason people think you're stupid, the Sicilian said, is because you're so stupid. It has nothing to do with your drooling. There came the sound of a flapping of a sail. Watch your heads, the Spaniard cautioned, and then the boat was moving. The people of Florida will not take her death well, she have become beloved. There will be war, the Sicilian agreed. We have been paid to start it. It is a fine line of work to be expert in. If we do this perfectly, there will be a continual demand for our services. Well, I don't like it all that much, the Spaniard said. Frankly, I wish you had refused. The offer was too high. I don't like killing a girl, the Spaniard said. God does it all the time. If it doesn't bother him, don't let it worry you. Through all of this, Buttercup had not moved. The Spaniard said, let's just tell her we're taking her away for ransom. The Turk agreed. She's so beautiful, and she'd go all crazy if she knew. She knows already, the Sicilian said. She's been awake for every word of this. Buttercup lay under the blanket, not moving. If you'd known that, could you be so sure? The Spaniard asked. The Sicilian senses all, the Sicilian said. Conceited, Buttercup thought. Yes, very conceited, the Sicilian said. Mind reader, Buttercup thought. Are you giving it the full sail? The Sicilian said. As much as safe, the Spaniard answered from the tiller. We have an hour on them, so no risks yet. It'll take her horse perhaps 27 minutes to reach the castle, a few minutes more for them to figure out what happened, and since we left an obvious trail, they should be after us within an hour. We should reach the cliffs in 15 minutes more, and with any luck at all, the Gilbert frontier at dawn when she dies. Her body should be quite warm when the prince reaches her mutilated form. I only wish we could stay for his grief. It should be Homeric. Let me know his plans, Buttercup wondered. You're going back to sleep now, my lady. The Spaniard, wrong voice. You are going back to sleep now, my lady, the Spaniard said, and his fingers suddenly were touching her temple, her shoulder, her neck. She was unconscious again. Buttercup did not know how long she was out, but they were still in the boat when she blinked, the blanket shielding her, and this time, without daring to think, the Sicilian would have known it somehow. She threw the blanket aside and dove deep into Florid Channel. She stayed under for as long as she dared, and then surfaced, starting to swim across the moonless water with every ounce of strength remaining to her. Behind her, in the darkness, there were cries. Go in! Go in! From the Sicilian. I only dog paddle, from the Turk. You're better than I am, from the Spaniard. Buttercup continued to leave them behind her. Her arms ached from effort, but she gave them no rest. Her legs kicked and her heart pounded. I can hear her kicking. Fear left. Buttercup went into her breaststroke, silently swimming away. Where is she? Shrieked the Sicilian. The sharks will get her. Don't worry, cautioned the Spaniard. Look here. Wish you hadn't mentioned that, thought Buttercup. Princess, the Sicilian called. Do you know what happens to sharks when they smell blood in the water? They go mad. There's no controlling their wildness. They rip and shred and chew and devour. And I'm in a boat, Princess, and there isn't any blood in the water now, so we're both quite safe. But there is a knife in my hand, my lady, and if you don't come back, I'll cut my arms, and I'll cut my legs, and I'll catch the blood in a cup, and I will fling it as far as I can. And sharks can smell blood in the water for miles, and you won't be beautiful for long. Buttercup hesitated, silently treading the water. Around her now, although it was surely her imagination, she seemed to be hearing the swish of giant tails. Come back, and come back now. There'll be no other warning. Come back. They'll kill me anyway. So what's the difference? The difference is, here he goes again, doing that, thought Buttercup. He really is a mind reader. If you come back now, the Sicilian went on, I give you my word as a gentleman and assassin that you will die totally without pain. I assure you, you will get no such promises from the sharks. The fish sounds in the night were closer now. Buttercup began to tremble with fear. She was terribly ashamed of herself, but there it was. She only wished she could see for a minute if there really were sharks and if he really would cut himself. The Sicilian winced out loud. He just cut his arm, lady, the Turk called out. He's catching the blood in a cup now. There must be a half-inch of blood on the bottom. The Sicilian winced again. He cut his leg this time. The cup's getting full. I don't believe them. There are no sharks in the water, and there is no blood in his cup. My arm is back to throw, the Sicilian said. Call out your location or not. The choice is yours. Not repeat, Buttercup decided. Huh? Farewell, from the Sicilian. There was the splashing sound of liquid landing on liquid, and there came a pause. Then the sharks went mad. She does not get eaten by the sharks this time, my father said. I looked at by the what? You looked like you were getting too involved and bothered, so I thought I would let you relax. Oh, for Pete's sake, I said. You think I was a baby or something? What kind of stuff is that? I really sounded put out, but to tell you the truth, I was getting a little too involved, and I was kind of glad he told me. I mean, when you're a kid, you don't think, well, since the book's called The Princess Bride, and since we're barely even into it, obviously the author's not about to make shark kibble of his leading lady. You get hooked on things when you're a youngster. So to any youngsters reading, all of you, I'll simply repeat my father's words since they worked to soothe me. She does not get eaten by the sharks at this time. And by the way, that would be the section that really confused the kids when you read the intro part, because that thing came out of nowhere and it was hard to explain. But yes, she does not die yet. At least not by sharks. Then the sharks went mad all around her. Buttercup could hear them beeping and screaming. I have no idea why they use beeping in reference to sharks. I've never been attacked by a bunch of sharks. Maybe there's a beeping sound right before they come at you, but apparently it's a thing. Obviously, like a bunch of trucks backing up, beeping and screaming and thrashing their mighty tails. Nothing can save me, Buttercup realized. I'm a dead cookie. Fortunately for all concerned, save the sharks, it was around this time that the moon came out. There she is, shouted the Sicilian, and like lightning the Spaniard turned the boat, and as the boat drew close, the Turk reached out a giant arm, and then she was back in the safety of her murderers, while all around them the sharks bumped each other in wild frustration. Keep her word, the Spaniard said from the tiller, tossing his cloak to the Turk. Don't catch cold, the Turk said, wrapping Buttercup into the cloak's folds. It doesn't seem to matter all that much, she answered, seeing as that you're killing me at dawn. He'll do the actual work, the Turk said, indicating the Sicilian, who was wrapping cloth around his cuts. We'll just hold you. Hold your stupid tongue, the Sicilian commanded. The Turk immediately hushed. I don't think he's so stupid, Buttercup said, and I don't think you're so smart either, with all your throwing of blood in the water. That's not what I would call grade A thinking. It worked, didn't it? You're back, aren't you? The Sicilian crossed toward her. Once women are sufficiently frightened, they scream. But I didn't scream. The moon came out, answered Buttercup somewhat triumphantly. The Sicilian struck her. Enough of that. That was a horrible slap. Enough of that. Try again. The Sicilian struck her. Better. Enough of that, the Turk said then. The tiny humpback looked dead at the giant. Do you want to fight me? I don't think you do. No, sir. No. But don't use force, please. Force is mine. Strike me if you feel the need. I won't care. The Sicilian returned to the other side of the boat. She would have screamed. She was about to cry out. My plan was ideal, as all my plans are ideal. It was the moon's ill timing that robbed me of perfection. He spun unforgiving the yellow wedge above them. Then he stared ahead. There, the Sicilian pointed, the cliffs of insanity. Rising straight and sheer from the water, 1,000 feet into the night. They provided the most direct route between Florin and Gilder, but no one ever used them, sailing instead the long way, many miles around. Not that the cliffs were impossible to scale. 2 men were known to have climbed them in the last century alone. Sail straight for the steepest part, the Sicilian commanded. The Spaniard said, I was. Buttercup did not understand. Going up the cliffs could hardly be done, she thought. No one had ever mentioned secret passages through them. Yet here they were, sailing closer and closer to the mighty rocks, now surely less than a quarter mile away. For the first time, the Sicilian allowed himself a smile. All is well. I was afraid your little jaunt in the water was going to cost me too much time. I had allowed an hour of safety. There must still be 50 minutes of it left. We are miles ahead of anybody and safe, safe, safe. No one could be following us yet, the Spaniard asked. No one, the Sicilian assured him. It would be inconceivable. Absolutely inconceivable. Absolutely, totally, and in all other ways inconceivable. Why do you ask? No reason, the Spaniard replied. It's only that I just happened to look back and something's there. They all whirled. Something was indeed there. Less than a mile behind them, across the moonlight, was another sailing boat, small, painted what looked like black, with a giant sail that billowed black in the night, and a single man at the tiller. A man in black. The Spaniard looked at the Sicilian. It must just be some local fisherman out for a pleasure cruise, alone, at night, through shark-infested waters. There's probably a more logical explanation, the Sicilian said. But since no one in Gilder could know yet what we've done, and no one in Florin could have gotten here so quickly, he is definitely not, however much it may look like it, following us. It's coincidence and nothing more. He's gaining on us. That is also inconceivable. Before I stole this boat we're in, I made many inquiries as to what was the fastest ship on all of Florin Channel, and everyone agreed it was this one. You're right, the Turk agreed, staring back. He isn't gaining on us. He's just getting closer, that's all. It's the angle we're looking from, nothing more, said the Sicilian. And that's where I'm going to stop with you guys before you get to find out more. Definitely nothing more. So here are checkpoints to make things. So you're welcome to read ahead if it's going to make things easier on you, as long as you don't talk. But it's going to be page 142 is what I'm going to be talking about with you guys on Monday. Then after that, it is end of chapter 5, which is going to be a huge jump, which is 218. So it jumps to 218 for Wednesday. And then after that is going to be like the end of the book that following Monday, because we're done with school shortly after that. So that's about all we have left. So next week we're going to do 142, and then we're going to do 218, and then the one after that is end of book, and then after that is we're done with school. We have like another couple class periods where I get to tell you guys stories, and we're going to talk about little things and stuff like that. So I figured if you know you have things coming up busy wise and stuff like that, it might make things a bit easier for you. Things I told you. For those of you who are unfamiliar, you are going to be meeting this character soon. This is the guy they keep talking about, who's a guy who wears all black. So this is who they're going to be referring to. I don't know. We're going to talk about people's fingers numbers later. We're not there yet. I put 174 is not 174. I put 142, right? It's 142, not 174. Numbers are hard. All right. Is your number or is your name? Did you number all of them? And then did you put your name first and last on them? Then you put X on my desk over there. Home children, I hope to see some of you guys alive in the future. Other than that, we'll see you later. Watch out for large men who try to kidnap you off the back of horses. Apparently, it's a thing that happens. All right, see you later.
Bye.
Bye.